Welcome to Global Rhythms Live, World Music and Dance Digital Concert Series presented by Ensemble Topaz.
Hi everyone, it's with great joy that we welcome you to the 21st edition of Global Rhythms Live, World Music and Dance Digital Concert. I'm Paromita, co-artistic director and choreographer of Ensemble Topaz, a Toronto-based integrated music and dance ensemble. And it's my great joy and honor, along with Mike Anklewicz, to present to you this week's edition of Global Rhythms Live. Each week, we feature different artists performing different genres of world music, dance, and performance traditions from around the world. Joining me in Studio Topaz is Mike Anklewicz, musician, composer, and music director for Ensemble Topaz, as well as several other music projects and faculty member at the Royal Conservatory of Music here in Toronto. He is also our managing technical director for Global Rhythms Live.
Thank you so much for joining us today. In many ways, this concert series allows us to keep artists performing and offer a venue for them to do that. And so we are so honored to have you join us today. And as we continue to let artists thrive and keep pursuing their art in a way that lets them get it out to the world. We also really enjoy being able to help the artists share their stories, and we enjoy learning about their stories just as much as I hope you do as well. You can support the artists by going to our PayPal or sending an e-transfer to ensemble.topaz@gmail.com. That's ensemble.topaz@gmail.com. So if you are somewhere around the world with access to PayPal, you can make a donation to help support the artists. Or if you're in Canada, you can just send an e-transfer just the way you would normally do. And if you are also watching on Facebook, we just like to let you know that the captions that appear below the screen are optional. You can turn them off.
They are auto-generated by Facebook, which is fantastic for accessibility, but sometimes when there's a song in a different language or a word in a different language, it often will try to find the closest approximate English word, so it's not often an accurate reflection of the word or the song. So we will go ahead and start with today's performances. We start today's performances with a performance of a traditional Armenian tune reworked by Mike Anklewicz. Mike Anklewicz is a Toronto-based musician and educator specializing in saxophone, clarinet, and woodwinds. Having studied classical music on the saxophone, he also performs jazz, klezmer, rock, R&B, Balkan, and Indian music, and is one of the few musicians in North America to play the algoza, a rare double flute from the Thar Desert between India and Pakistan. Anklewicz founded Klez Factor in 2004, composing and performing a fusion of Eastern European Jewish traditional music with jazz, rock, Balkan, and other musical styles, garnering airplay on radio and television on 4 continents with their 3 albums. As music director of Ensemble Topaz, he has guided the band and created arrangements for music that has its source in Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Tajikistan, and India, collaborating with many musicians from all over the world and recording with the assistance of an Ontario Arts Council music recording grant in 2019. He also holds a PhD in ethnomusicology from York University and teaches saxophone at the Royal Conservatory of Music here in Toronto. So here is Mike with an arrangement of a traditional Armenian tune. Thank you so much, Mike. Mike, what can you tell us about this song that you just played?
Well, it's an Armenian folk song called Tamzara, and I first discovered this song. I went through a period where I was listening to a lot of Armenian music, and I found this really great oud player, an Armenian American oud player named John Berberian, and I had discovered him through, I think, just YouTube videos, and you know how you get into a YouTube vortex where you just keep going into that rabbit hole. And I found this album that he had recorded back in the late 60s called Middle Eastern Rock. And it's not really a rock album, but it's like this Armenian folk psychedelic rock jazz fusion album. And really along the lines of the tastes that I developed, playing, progressive jazz and playing klezmer and klezmer fusion. And it led me to listen to more of John Berberian's music, and I found this early 70s recording of him playing this song, Tamzara. And I got into it. I found other recordings of it and different imaginings of this song. Over the years, there's a fairly recent one by an artist from Armenia named Arpi. And there's, another one that I was really inspired by as well, an acoustic version that John Berberian played along with a clarinetist. So, I had transcribed this song a number of years ago and was really looking for a new venue to play it in, and sort of created this arrangement through the magic of recording technology and MIDI instruments and all that fun stuff.
Great. Tell us a little bit about the instrumentation that you've used in this version.
Well, I kind of started with a sort of basic, but I did kind of want to honor that psychedelic spirit that John Berberian had in those 60s. So I really wanted to have some synthesizers and sort of built the track in my software using, software and using sort of samples and synthesizer sounds. And then, of course, layering acoustic instruments like the percussion, the davul.
Oh, tell us about that.
Well, that's the big drum, of course, that you saw me play. And we have ours on loan from the wonderful Fethi Karakeçili, who is a Kurdish scholar and dancer and singer and
ethnomusicologist and artistic director of Dilan Dance Company.
Absolutely. And so we have these davuls on loan from Fethi, and every once in a while we have a good reason to bring it out and play it. And then I overlaid electric guitar and more synthesizers and of course clarinet.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much for sharing this. And ladies and gentlemen, if you're enjoying the works that you are watching being performed today, please consider donating to support the artists.
And now our guest artist for this week is Ann Lederman. Ann Lederman is a fiddler, singer, composer, multi-instrumentalist, and storyteller who has been on the front lines of the renewal of many styles of world music in Canada. Celtic Canadian fiddle traditions, Indigenous fiddling, klezmer music, African Canadian music, and more. She was a founding member of Muddy York, the Flying Bulgar klezmer band Loka and A, and currently plays solo as part of Lederman Bell and with Jacko Bako of Cameroon. She has 5 CDs under her own name of traditional and original music, and most recently, The Old Man's Table, tunes from Grandy Fagnan, a Métis fiddler from Camperville, Manitoba, as well as dozens of other bands and artists. She's written a play about her mentors in the world of the Indigenous fiddle tradition, Spirit of the Narrows, which has been performed to critical acclaim at the Blythe Theatre Festival in Blythe, Ontario, the Pearl Company in Hamilton, Ontario, the Small World Music Centre in Toronto, and in Scotland. Anne also founded the organizations World of Music Toronto to teach and present many forms of world music, and World Fiddle Day Toronto to celebrate world music on bowed string instruments. In 2016, she received the Estelle Klein Award for her contributions to Canadian folk music. Ladies and gentlemen, here is Ann Lederman. Thank you so much, Ann Lederman, for joining us, and thank you so much for that amazing tune. Can you tell us a little bit about the tune and where you learned it?
Yeah, well, I'm originally from Manitoba. Was already living here in Ontario when I discovered this amazing style of fiddling existed in Indigenous communities in Manitoba, Métis and First Nations communities. It's not even very well known to other people in Manitoba if they're outside of those communities. It's funny. I've done little tours of Manitoba and played tunes like that and sort of ask the audience where they think it's from, and I get the weirdest answers, Sweden, whatever. And, and then when I say, well, it's actually from down the road here, about 30 miles, they just can't believe it because they've never actually heard it. It's something that, that for a long time, Indigenous players kind of kept to themselves. They thought that outside people wouldn't like it. It's very French. With the feet. The tunes are really quite irregular. The phrasing is irregular. It doesn't add up to 32 bars the way a lot of other fiddling does. So, so I was delighted to be able to hang out with a lot of these older guys and learn this stuff. And it's good that I did and recorded them a lot because it wasn't really being passed down at that point.
And you mentioned that you were already in Ontario when you started learning this music. Could you tell us a bit about your musical journey and when you started to play the violin and the fiddle and how you started to really get an interest in these, traditional fiddling forms?
Yeah, I mean, I started as a 19-year-old, picked up the violin, and I thought that I would play jazz. That's what I wanted to improvise, wanted to play along with all my guitar playing buddies, thought the violin would be a cool instrument to do that on. Didn't know that folk fiddling existed. Honestly, I had just never heard it. I grew up in a family that listened to classical music and jazz. So when I discovered folk fiddling, it was just sort of love at first hearing, I guess, not first sight. There's just so many things I love about it. It's a very natural way to work with the violin by ear. It takes advantage of all of the things that the fiddle can do really well. All the droning, the playing on two strings, all the chords that you can do, all this great rhythm, and then these styles, these French influenced styles that use the feet, that made it even better. That was a bit of a trick. I had to sit in a room for a few weeks trying to figure out how to make these rhythms with my feet and play the fiddle at the same time. But they say you have to sell your soul to the devil for that anyway. But... and I was also going to say that, yeah, I get drawn to traditional dance fiddle musics from all over the world. As you know, I played a lot of klezmer music. I was the fiddler in the Flying Bulwark Klezmer Band for years, and have learned some other European styles, a bit of Ukrainian music. Now I'm sort of heavily into playing Scandinavian music on the hardanger, which is a fiddle with sympathetic strings. I don't think we'll have time to haul that out today. It takes 10 minutes to get it in tune. But just love them all. And the Canadian ones, I guess I've done the most of because it's my country and I want to pass it on to people. I teach a lot. I try to get people inspired and excited by all these old styles of playing.
So what would you say is, are there commonalities to the Canadian styles? What are the differences? What are some of the commonalities that, we might be able to hear when we listen to a variety of these different styles?
Yeah, well, they're all coming originally mostly from the British Isles. As we know, there's a great Yiddish tradition in larger cities, and that's been here for, well over 100 years. And on the prairies, there's a huge Ukrainian tradition, which is very close to klezmer music in a lot of ways. But most of the other older fiddling styles in Canada are coming from the British Isles with, a bit of France in there, plus some American influence coming up. So it's jigs and reels, that are coming from Scotland and Ireland and England, but it's kind of amazing how they come out differently in different parts of Canada. So Newfoundland has a particular kind of character. Cape Breton has a character. Cape Breton is very Scottish. It's the most old world Scottish style still. You get into the Maritimes, you get into some of the slightly newer approaches to fiddling where it's a bit cleaner, not on two strings, just clean and fast. And that's kind of what the whole Ontario old time scene is like, clean, fast fiddling. And then as I say, Quebec and the Métis Indigenous styles have this foot stuff happening. So those are some of the obvious things you'll hear if we go across the country, which we're planning to do in a minute.
Well, I was just going to ask you if you could play. You've told us about a medley that you've put together of different Canadian styles from coast to coast. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and then go ahead and play that for us, please?
Yeah, well, I don't want to tell you what all the tunes are yet, although I can afterwards. It's fun. You want to know that I'm starting in Newfoundland and working my way westward to British Columbia, and then it's kind of fun to guess where I am at any given point. We don't stop in every province. We stop, for each of the major styles of fiddling. So as I switch tunes, you'll hopefully hear some style changes as well.
Okay, so here's Anne Lederman playing a medley of fiddle styles, fiddle tunes from across Canada. Thank you so much, Anne. That was a really great compilation of tunes. Could you actually, yeah, I think you said that you could tell us the names of them.
Yeah, the first one actually doesn't have a name. It's a tune from Harry Hibbs, who was one of the first guys I ever played with when I was 22, 23. He was a Newfoundland button accordion player who was quite famous at one time, had a TV show in the 60s. I didn't know any of this because I was in Manitoba, where we, you know, you don't mention Newfoundland very often in Manitoba. But when I came to Toronto, somehow I got hooked up with him and got to do little tours of Newfoundland. So it's a great old, really cranking, fast, hot style of fiddling. From there, we just skipped over the water to Cape Breton, a tune called Bog and Lachen. These are all pretty well-known tunes in that medley in different parts of the country. So that's a very old Scottish strathspey. Then we hit New Brunswick for the Little Burnt Potato, kind of the New Brunswick national anthem of old-time fiddling, a little jig there. And from there, straight into Quebec, where we did a tune that's often called Petit Boucher in Quebec, the Little Lumberjack, which is one of those little wooden guys that, you know, that you can get to dance on a board. It's based on an old Scottish tune called Lord Macdonald's, and there's versions of Lord Macdonald's in virtually every style in North America. Then we zipped into, I think of it as zipping into the Ontario old-time square dance scene, where I did a swingy version of Red River Valley, which probably originally comes from Manitoba, but it is the tune that, you know, old-time square dance callers in Ontario ask for again and again and again when you're playing for those dances. So I did a bit of that. We then got into a little Ukrainian Kostyuk from Manitoba, straight into Red River Jig, which is kind of the national anthem of the Métis tradition. That was the other one where I used my feet. And finally jumped into a waltz from British Columbia called the Ook Pik Waltz, written by a great fiddler named Kenny Rogers, who was, Frankie Rogers, who was more of a swing fiddler, really. Country swing fiddler, but it's one of his great tunes.
Thank you so much. And I'm wondering if you could tell us all a little bit about, you know, what you've been doing since the COVID the COVID situation has come upon us, and how you're keeping busy, how you're sort of, you know, adapting what you're doing into, you know, the situation that we've got now.
Yeah, well, I do a lot of recording tunes on video, and I post them on my YouTube channel. I post them on Facebook. I've told people I'll put one little video up a week of a 2-minute tune. I teach a lot still, classes and individual lessons on Zoom, you know, and I'm practicing. I've taken on like chunks of stuff that I'm going to learn, like a whole ton of stuff from a certain Irish tradition, or a whole ton of stuff from a certain Scandinavian tradition, and all that's great. The hardest part is not getting to play with other people, right? I get a little sick of just playing solo fiddle all the time. So I'm starting to experiment with, you know, getting friends to, you know, editing videos together, at least with 2 people, which I can manage myself, like a split screen video with a guitar player, with a piano player. Beyond that, I'm not sure I have the technical capability to start, you know, doing 4 or 5 screen videos for bands, but that's probably next on the plate, is to, you know, it's been something a lot of us, probably a lot of musicians say they're going to do for years. They're going to do more videos, right? And you never get around to it because it's so bloody time consuming, and you have to learn so much technical stuff to do it. And the pandemic kind of forced us, since, you know, we're stuck here, it's kind of forced us, if we want any contact with the outside world, to figure it out. So I am grateful for that.
And we definitely know what you mean about having to learn new skills. And I mean, this whole broadcast is coming from learning new skills, and you know, just try to find new ways to keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah, it's interesting. and I'll take on a course once in a while online or something totally unrelated, just so I, have to read other things and think about other things. And I haven't had any trouble keeping busy. Making money is a whole other issue, of course, but yeah.
Definitely, we've also been in the same spot. We're keeping busy, definitely. So we'd love to hear one more tune from you. What could you tell us about a tune you'd like to play for us?
Yeah, I'm debating whether to play a great old Irish jig because I love the swing and the ornamentation of Irish music, and there really wasn't any pure Irish music in that last medley I played. Or an Appalachian tune, and they're quite different styles. Although the Appalachian stuff will sound a little more like the Métis stuff. I could actually go from one into the other if I do short versions of each. That would be a weird transition, but let's try it. An Irish jig called Dr. O'Neill's into an Appalachian reel called the Cherokee Shuffle.
Thank you so much to Anne Lederman for her wonderful playing and telling us just so much great information and really exciting stuff about Canadian fiddling traditions. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are enjoying our show today, please consider supporting the artists by making a donation either via PayPal or e-transfer to ensemble.topaz@gmail.com. That's ensemble.topaz@gmail.com. The link is also available on our Facebook page, and any amount is appreciated. And thank you so much for supporting artists at this time. And now we're going to move on to our next artist, this young lady right here, Paromita Carr. Paromita Carr is a Toronto-based dance artist and is the first to complete a PhD in dance studies in Canada from York University in Toronto. A performer of different world dance styles, she attributes her core training in dance to classical Indian Odissi dance. She is an active full-time performer of dances of Central Asian and South Asian heritage and is the choreographer and lead dancer for Ensemble Topaz, our Toronto-based integrated dance music ensemble. She currently holds an Ontario Arts Council grant for deeper study in Iranian heritage dances, and her troupe Ensemble Topaz is a proud recipient of an Ontario Arts Council Dance Training Project's Equity and Access grant for Kazakh dance. She has had the honor of learning Rajasthani dances under several master teachers in Rajasthan, India, under the Ontario Arts Council Chalmers Professional Development Grant. Among these dance forms was the Chari dance, which involves balancing the pot on the head, which she learned in Kishangarh, Rajasthan, the birthplace of this form near the city of Ajmer. And we're going to see one of these Chari dances right now.
पड़े पिछड़े ढोला पीपड़ी सा, पड़े पिछड़े ढोला पीपड़ी, इन पीपड़ कीरा ओ पीपड़ कीरा डाड़ा चार, घोड़ी मरी चिरमी सा, चिरमीरा डाड़ा चार, घोड़ी मरी चिरमिसा, पड़े पिछड़े ढोला पीपड़ी सा, पड़े पिछड़े ढोला पीपड़ी, पीपड़ कीरा ओ चिरमीरा डाड़ा चारे, घोड़ी भरी चिरमिसा, चिरमीरा डाड़ा चार, घोड़ी भरी चिरमिसा। चिरमी बाबो सारी लाडली सा, चिरमी बाबो सारी लाडली, आतो नित उठी, आतो नित उठ पियर जाए, घोड़ी भरी चिरमी सा, आतो नित उठ पियर जाए, घोड़ी भरी चिरमिसा, चिरमीरा डाड़ा चार, घोड़ी भरी चिरमिसा, घोड़ी भरी चिरमिसा।
Thank you so much, Paromita. What can you tell us about this dance?
So Chari, this dance tradition is originally was done with a flaming pot. So this pot that you see on my head, in a very traditional context, it would also have charcoal, which is lit on fire. And because our home studio is in the basement with a low ceiling, you don't see the fire. But in a very traditional Chari performance, there would be fire on top of the pot. So it comes from this small town of Kishangarh, which is near a larger city called Ajmer. And I had the honor of learning this in 2017, or at the very beginning of 2018, from the family of Sarita Singh Gaur. This was actually the family that first took the Chari form out from just the village and put it on stage as a performance tradition. And around that time, I actually had the privilege of interviewing Sarita Singh Gaur, and I asked her about the history of this dance form. And she mentioned that in Kishangarh, it came from a tradition of actually the wedding processionals, and they would lead the bridal couple or the wedding couple, the newly married couple with this. So it comes from the wedding tradition, and now it's done quite widely throughout Rajasthan. And even when Rajasthani performance is done outside of Rajasthan, it's done quite widely on stages everywhere. Typically, it's also an ensemble dance form, not so frequently as a soloist form, but again, in its modern and current day staging, it's also often done by soloists. Yeah.
Well, that's so interesting. And is there anything else you can tell us?
No, just the song is often used in Chari performances. It's a love song, but traditionally it's used a lot in Chirmi. It's used a lot in Chari performances, and yeah.
So thank you so much, Paromita. And thank all of you for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed today's edition of Global Rhythm's World Music and Dance Digital Concert, streamed from the living rooms of our artists and Studio Topaz in our living room. Please support our artists by making a contribution to the PayPal address. It's ensemble.topaz@gmail.com. Also, you can send an e-transfer if you are in Canada. In the coming weeks, we will continue to feature artists from across the world performing traditional and innovative artistic material. Please stay updated by following our Facebook page as well as Instagram, which is @Ensemble Topaz. And you can find the links to the wonderful artists who joined us today. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us so that you can get notifications when we upload a new video. Thank you for joining us today in our journey, and we hope you'll join us again in the future.